Hello, and welcome to the Table and Well podcast. I'm Tennison.
And I'm Ginelle. Thank you for joining us as we discuss topics and give practical tools that help you live, grow, and be in healthy, joy-filled relationship with God, yourself, and others.
For more information and resources, or if you're looking for coaching, connection, and community, please visit tableandwellco.com. We hope you enjoy this podcast. Hello, and thank you for joining us today on the Table and Well podcast. This is episode 6, and we are in the middle of our maturity series, Revisited. We just finished our infant maturity and walked through really what the needs and the tasks are for us to be fully mature in the infant stage of maturity. Yeah. Today, we're going to be taking a good look at, or starting to take a look at child. But before we do that, we do want to do just a quick overview of infant maturity. So we just kind of give you some of the major points in that, so you guys can.
And really, because these build on each other.
Yes, they do build on each other.
So we can have maturity skills mastered in each stage, but in order for all of them to be complete, to really build that foundation for the next stage, that's what we're trying to lay here. It's pretty typical to have maturity skills throughout all of the stages by the time you reach adult parent. But yet we're looking to complete each stage to build that really strong foundation.
Absolutely. So just a really quick overview. So what we're looking at is, so infant, again, is from ages 0, so birth, to age 3. And the primary task is to learn to live in joy and learning how to receive.
Right.
And again, that just joy, the deep knowing through relational experience that someone is glad to be with you no matter what. Mm-hmm. So learning to live in that space, that you are joy, that wherever you go, you bring joy, that the faces of your caregivers light up when they see you. Yes. And you understand that and know that. And so a mature infant should be able to know how to receive. They know how to rest. They're able to synchronize or attune with others. They can regulate their emotions, so they're able to calm themselves. So self-regulation, as we talked about in the last podcast. Able to return to joy from every emotion. Be able to be the same person over time. Mm-hmm. So knowing that no matter how they may present themselves, that they are the same person, that they're loved for being who they are. Mm-hmm. No matter what.
Which then allows their highs to be less high and their lows to be less low.
Yes. Have an awareness of their needs and how to meet them. So that's the beginning stage of knowing what they need. And so being able to, we're getting to this today, but beginning to learn how to ask for it, to know that there is a way to ask for what they need.
Right.
And then be able to, the next one, ask for their basic needs.
First is identifying, right?
Identify.
And then asking.
Yeah. So when the infant learns to tell you what's wrong or tell you what they need, and that is when you begin to notice that's the transition from infant into the next state of maturity, which is the child stage.
Mm-hmm. And learning how to take care of themselves.
Yes.
And you see this in development. Most 3-year-olds are working toward that skill. Mm-hmm. Like, it's very normal and natural development. But what we're not giving credit for, maybe as a society, is that this is actually really relational as well.
Yes.
It is how I interact with other humans to get my needs met, right? And how to identify my own needs, which is relationally interacting with myself and caring for myself well. So, so today, child maturity actually starts at age 4 and goes to the age of 12. And again, we talked about the arc of all these maturity stages have kind of a beginning point, and then the skills are learned throughout the time of these age windows. The primary goal is learning to take care of self, just one person.
Yes.
Very selfish stage, very egocentric stage, actually. And it's completely appropriate.
Yes.
We get irritated with kids because we're like, why does everything have to be around you? Like, the whole world does not center around you.
Right. Why are you
in their
so
brain,
selfish?
But in their brain, it actually does, and that's really, really appropriate. When their brain is not allowed to be self-centric in this stage, then we end up carrying that self-centricness into our adult years.
Yes.
Because it hasn't been completed. The second primary goal is to develop individual identity and know what satisfies.
Yeah.
So who am I and what brings me life? What makes me feel complete is all learned in this stage. Childhood is a time of expanding your skill sets and exploring the world around you. In this way, kids learn their place in the world, their identity, who their people are, their belonging and their identity in the group, and how to act like themselves in a way that gets their needs met.
Yes. Oh, that's really good.
And when they learn coping mechanisms to get their needs met that aren't actually true to who they are, they don't have the space to do that in a really healthy, this is out of my identity way.
Yes.
Then we see this in adults, that they're looking and trying all kinds of things that don't feel good in their relationships, don't feel good to them and don't feel good to whoever's on the other side of that relationship when they're attempting to get their needs met.
Yeah, it's interesting because you'll see that if you start to pay attention and notice, you'll actually see you can catch yourself in just patterns and habits of things that you do. And you can look at other people as well and go, oh, okay, yeah, so that's just how they know to get their needs met. That's what worked for them when they were younger. And so now it continues on into their adult years. And so, and if it's not healthy, then.
And again, this ties back to attachment and bonding. And if our parents were not able to be present or skilled in such a way that was able to identify what we need and just meet it, or help us to navigate those big emotions, or help us learn how to identify what we need and ask for it, and feel safe in doing that, and wasn't invested into developing our identity, then, and maybe instead was distracted or addicted or too busy or emotionally unavailable to us, then we need that connection.
Yes.
And so as children, we will find a way to get it.
We will.
Whether that's maybe acting out or being the jokester, or maybe withdrawing, because we noticed when we withdrawed, our parents would come to us.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was demanding or controlling. And we developed these coping mechanisms as kids to get that love that we desperately need, because it's like air. And then we end up carrying that into our adult years because we think that's how relationships work.
Exactly.
Our brain kind of has a file that it stores of like, okay, to get B, I need to do A.
Yes.
Even though that's not true everywhere. And so until we start to develop new experiences, we're going to continue to do A.
Right.
But then the B result often is a negative response now that we're getting older and we're not cute little kids anymore.
Right. It's not cute anymore. Now it's, what are you doing?
Right. Or it's painful for those involved. So
if you even think about kids you can see this in middle schoolers, you see it in high schoolers, where you'll have the kid that's the jokester. He's always cracking jokes in class, which is fun and cool, when he's in class. But really what is happening is that is how he or she has learned that she or he gets attention.
Right.
Good or bad. Because they haven't got that attention from their caregivers in any way whatsoever. So they figured out a way to evoke a response.
Right. Yes. Yep. And that could look like a variety of different behavior. We like to say all behavior is communication.
Yes.
And we learned that strongly when we were fostering, that some of the behaviors that were so frustrating for us, because we're like, what is this kid doing and what are we supposed to do about it? It's like, oh, he's just trying to communicate. She's just trying to communicate a need. And they don't have the skill to communicate the need.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, here we are as adults struggling with the same thing.
Yeah. Wow.
So a child is expected to be able to take care of one person themselves.
Yes.
That's it. What they lack is the ability to take care of you and themselves at the same time.
Right.
And as a parent, this can feel really frustrating because you can feel really unseen when raising your kids, and you can feel like they don't see you as a person, as somebody who also has needs and desires and real life that you're navigating.
Well, they don't.
They
just don't.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we will put this back on our kids. We will say like, oh, you're so selfish. You're such a jerk. Why can't you or
you
maybe
don't
different
call your
words.
kid a jerk,
Right.
but
Well, maybe not to their face, but
wow.
but internally we
Yeah.
feel that
Yeah.
like they don't care about me at all.
Ungrateful.
Ungrateful. They don't
Yeah.
see all that I do for them.
Yes.
They don't know how hard this is, and it's because they don't. Developmentally, they actually don't. And it's okay. It's appropriate. That doesn't mean like you let your kid be a selfish brat. There is an appropriate balance here, but their brains are actually really, really focused on developing who they are and their place in the world. Their brains do not have capacity to worry about who you are and your place in the world.
Right.
And so
Right.
when we force kids to care about more than just themselves, whether that's caregiving for siblings or caregiving for us as parents, then we begin to steal this time and space that's really appropriate for them to mature in these skills that we're going to talk about today.
And we'll talk about that. Maybe not. I don't think in this podcast. I don't think we'll get to it here, but we will talk about that and what that dynamic looks like too when when they do become caregivers too soon.
Right. Yeah.
So
yeah.
So, just like in every stage of maturity, there are needs and tasks. We talked about that before, and so we understand it. The needs are the things that we need from our community, and the tasks are the things that we need to do. And when all those things are done, that's when we become fully mature in that stage. And so these are the things that we need. So we're going to start with the child maturity stage needs. So this is what a child will need from their community so they can become fully mature in this space.
Can I pause you right there?
Absolutely.
I know we've talked about in the past podcasts about needs from the community, and we've talked about ways that now that as adults, if we didn't have these needs met, we can meet them for ourselves. But I just want to jump in here because this is where it gets really, really tangible.
Sure.
Is that we actually don't believe that any two parents, even on their best day, have everything that a child needs. We really believe that kids are meant to be raised in community, and that the beauty of having a multi-generational community and a diverse community allows your kid to have everything that they need. So as we read this list, if you're a parent right now and you hear this list and you're like, I can't do all that, like that is not possible, whether because I don't know, you're human or maybe you have some things that you've struggled through in your life and like you don't have the skill yourself to pass it down. This is why though, like this is why our kids should be raised in community. And that could look like a variety of different things, but at a minimum, what I would really encourage is that your kid is watching other adults model this behavior, model engagement with their children. As we read off these tests, think about maybe some people that you know, whether they're on the other parents you might know on the soccer team or at your church or in your family, maybe grandparents, people of that nature who could also help meet these needs. What we're not saying is a parent or a set of parents should be able to do all this for their kid.
Yeah. Some of these, yes, but not the entirety of the list.
Yes.
So, okay, number one, help learning. They need help in learning how to appropriately articulate their needs. So that's really self-explanatory. They just need help to know how to. It's that stage of life where you say use your words.
Yeah, you're right. Exactly.
It's kind of like the whining, and they're in that mid stage where they can actually speak and articulate what they need, but they just need to be reminded and coached in that, like, nope, use your words. What do you need? And help them even. Well, I won't get into all that yet, but just help them be able to articulate what is happening inside of them and what their need is and what they need. And so they're able to do that.
And it is teaching them to grow out of that infant stage of where it's your job to identify what they need, and now it's their job to identify what they need.
Yeah.
And anyone coming from a codependent background, this is really challenging. You have a lot of strong skill in being very, very aware of what everyone needs and trying to anticipate it and meet it before it ever happens. And then you'll bring that into raising your kids, and then you're going to raise kids who don't get to grow through this maturity stage.
Yeah.
So just be really aware that, like, oh, I actually know what they need right now, but that isn't the most important thing. The most important thing is that right now I help them discover for themselves and articulate what that is.
Yeah, absolutely. Challenge and encourage them to do difficult things. So that one's also very important because personal experience, that was one of the things that I had to learn and work through. If you listen to that first podcast when we did in the series, if you listen to that, I talk about that. I said that was my biggest thing. And I was in the season then of doing hard things, like every day or every week there was like a new hard thing that I was having to do, and knowing that I could do it. But if I really wish I would have learned this when I was younger,
right?
That you can do hard things. You can do it. It's hard, and it may take some effort, it may take some work, but you can do it. It's not going to kill you. You're going to be here. It's going to work. And so being able to challenge and encourage your kids to do difficult things, to do hard things, is such a key skill.
Yeah, and remember that they're developing their identity at this stage, and they're learning what satisfies. And if they are not made to do hard things or invited to do hard things, then how do they know who they are in the midst of hard times?
Yeah.
Where do they learn that skill? And how do they know it satisfies them? Because satisfaction rarely comes on the other side of something that you don't have to put effort into.
Very true.
Like, it'd
so
be nice,
true.
but yeah, so this is really important. And we actually, so it's kind of funny, this is kind of a little personal background thing, but so I come from a family who has a really strong work ethic, a family of entrepreneurs, mostly male driven. And we have had to work for everything we have. It's just a family of, we've worked really hard, and many people have found great success in what they do, but there's no expectation that anything's going to come unless we work really hard for it.
Right.
Tennison's family.
My family, we walk in favor. Like that's just, it's a berry gift that we have from the Lord, that the berries have favor. And so wherever we go, whatever we do, we walk into a space and we get things, and people, the door opens fairly easily. And it's a gift. It really is a gift, and it's a blessing. When I was younger, I didn't know how to steward that at all.
Both take stewardship.
Both take stewardship, and so we have a gift of favor, and so it's two total opposite.
Right, and so as we had kids, what did come, which was really beautiful, is that our kids walk in favor with this really strong work ethic.
Yes.
And one of the things that I didn't have any context for this, because remember, we didn't learn this until our kids were out of the house.
Right.
But I always created spaces where my kids could fail.
Yes.
That sounds terrible. That sounds like something that would not be kind. But I remember our daughter, when she was 11 years old, there was this dance team that was in the city that we lived in. I
remember.
And it was an adult dance crew.
Yep.
And she was like, I want to try out for that. And I knew good and well that she wasn't going to make it because it was all adults. And it wasn't really appropriate for her to be on the team or anything. But like in her mind, she really thought she could make it. And that it was just a matter of trying out and she was going to be there.
Yep.
And so I had a conversation with the people who were running the team and just asked if she could try out and give it a shot, and just if they would give her some feedback. And but knowing full and well she was going to end up being disappointed. I didn't tell her, hey, there's no way you're going to make this team. Like you can go try out if you want the feedback, but you're not going to make it. I just let her believe that she was going to make it.
Yeah.
Because one, I think we need to also teach our kids to live into their dreams, and whether or not their dreams come true, that's actually a skill that can be learned.
Yes. Yep.
And who she's become because of that thing, sure enough, she tried out. She gave it like 120%.
Yep, she did.
She got great feedback. She didn't make the thing, but she's also the kid who all along has been able to do the hard, risky thing and show up to the spaces of like, I don't know if it's going to work out or not, but you know what? I'm going to give it a shot. I've literally nothing to lose. And she's become that kid who just has that intrinsically built in her because of this. She's not afraid to do the hard thing, to take the risk, and allow what comes to come with no consequence to who she is. Like it doesn't change who she is. And we created lots of opportunities to walk that through with our kid.
Yeah. Yeah.
Both of our kids.
Both of our kids. But definitely would live in that space. That so awesome. So also another need is they need help doing what they don't feel like doing. I think we all need that.
Right.
Help doing what they don't feel like doing. But the way we kind of looked at that too is, I don't know if you guys have heard of what we call the leadership square. It's got a bunch of different names out there, but
you've probably heard of this, but it might be called something different.
Yeah. And so this is that it's it's a way of mentorship, discipleship. You can pick a word and put it in there. But the way it works is, you obviously have a square. Top of the square is this. You have this space that says, "I do, you watch." So, me as the parent, I'm doing it, and then my child is watching, and so they are taking in. They're seeing how we're doing it. Then, as you turn the corner, then it goes to "I do, you help." And so now I'm doing it. We can say we'll say baking a cake. So the first time I bake the cake and my child helps or watches. Second time we bake a cake, I'm baking the cake, but now I'm asking them to measure the flour or to get the eggs out of the fridge or to turn on the oven, start prepping things. And so they're helping me navigate this space.
And they're part of that process.
They're part of the process. They're seeing it. They're learning it. They're even though they're not actually making the cake, they're not, kneading it and with the blender and all of that, but they are watching.
Right.
Then the next one is on the bottom is you do, I watch. So now they are actually doing it. They're taking the lead and I'm assisting them in this endeavor of making a cake. So now I'm the one that's measuring this thing and being the runner.
Getting the eggs out of the
getting
fridge.
the eggs out the fridge and getting the milk and doing all of that. And then the last step is you do, and then it says I watch, but the one I prefer is you do, I celebrate. So now you're doing it. My child they're in the kitchen, they're doing the thing, they're baking the cake, and I am celebrating with them as they are making this cake.
Yeah.
And I'm there for questions if they have any.
Right. Yep.
But I'm not in the middle of it. I'm just over here going, yes, go, I'm cheering them on. You got this. And so that's what that looks like. So helping them learn how to do what they don't like doing can look very much like that.
Yeah.
But I think this formula is really great in any space for kids, even if they like doing something.
Right.
They may not even know they like doing it, but if they're in this kind of rhythm, then it's like, oh, I can do that.
And this could even be used if you're leading a team or
absolutely,
in your family in general. And usually what's at play here that I don't feel like doing typically comes with overwhelm. Usually there's some overwhelm at play there of not that I just don't like doing it, but for some reason for me it feels overwhelming and impossible
to do.
There's days where we're absolutely lazy, and anybody who has teenagers knows what this is like, and and motivating them to do the thing that needs to be done even when they don't really want to do it. Pay attention if there's overwhelm in there, and regardless, getting dirty with them, modeling with them, like cleaning their room. A child 4 to 12, like this is really pretty normal. And in the beginning at 4 years old, you're like, let's clean up. And what you don't do is stand at the side of the room with your arms folded and like you're cleaning up all your toys. That's what you're doing right now. I don't care if you want to. Like nobody's really, well, there are people doing
that.
But like in general, if you're really wanting to parent and raise a kid to maturity, you're not saying that. But you're down on your hands and knees, and you're too like, okay, you do one, I do one, you do one, I do one.
The cleanup song.
The cleanup song, right. And you're modeling that of like, let's do it together. And then if you're continually doing that by the age of 12, you're not down on your hands and knees having to clean the room with them. They'll have built the skill to do it themselves. And you're celebrating piece of like, gosh, you got your room clean. Let's go. Let's grab some ice cream or whatever the story might be. But
and so I do have a quick story on that. So our son, he was probably about 4 or 5, and his room was a mess. And he
was a huge Lego fan. His floor is often covered in Legos.
And so, but his room, I mean, like you couldn't see the floor,
right?
Like in his room. And I remember, like, okay, you got to clean your room, bud. And he just wouldn't. He couldn't do it. He was crying and pitching a fit and wouldn't be able to do it. He was like, it's too much. It's like that overwhelm. And so I went in there. So he's a huge Star Wars. We're a huge Star Wars. Him and I are anyway. So, but we bought me these lightsabers. And so I had this idea of taking the lightsabers. I laid them all out, and I literally like sectioned off his room into like 4 or 6 little quadrants in his room. And I'm like, all right, here's the deal. I was like, I'm going to clean that space over there first and just get that spot clean. Put everything in that where it needs to go. And so he was able to go and he could do that. And then I'm cheering him on like, yeah, you got that. You did it, and he was past the stage of needing my help. It was more like
I think he was actually a bit older. I want to say he was like 7 or 8.
He might have been 7 or 8. It doesn't matter. I guess maybe it does matter, but anyway, but it took a little while. It took probably 45 minutes or so, but
you had to stick with it. You had to continue to champion him. And
but he did it, and it was cool. But it was one of those things, helping him understand and helping him navigate the things that felt overwhelming for him in that moment. And so where now he knows. I mean, he knows he can do hard things, but in that moment, he was able to say, "Oh, I can do this," and
it was able to get done. And I remember him actually modeling after that. Whenever his room was a disaster, him grabbing his lightsabers and quadranting his room himself and breaking it down into smaller chunks, because that felt like that caused it to feel more doable.
Manageable.
And now he had a skill, a way to approach when life felt overwhelming. And doing the hard thing. Yeah,
that's good. Another one would be help to evaluate consequences of decisions.
Behaviors.
Well, that too. Yes, behaviors. And so, it's like, okay, and again, consequences, guys, they're good and bad. Consequences just aren't
that's good, yeah.
bad things.
Right.
It's all of the things. And so I'm helping them evaluate that.
Right. And I know you're going to blow past this, and maybe it doesn't need a lot of explanation, but because it might seem really obvious, but oftentimes we're like, we will protect our children from the consequences of their behaviors.
Yep.
And this is the time between 4 and 12, again, to kind of set your kids up for failure in the way that you allow their behaviors to bring natural consequences and not spend so much energy protecting them from it, because it's like fail fast, fail small. And they are going to learn at this stage really small consequences that are going to be much bigger if they're waiting to learn this in their 20s or their 30s or their 40s.
Yes.
Being late to work and I guess we're talking 12. So let's think of a different example. Not turning in your homework and get a failing grade in second grade is a different story than getting a failing grade in high school.
Yes.
Absolutely. Or in college.
Consequences are majorly different.
Right. And then going back, and even when you notice, like, okay, we have behaviors that are bringing lots of consequences, letting that pain be a real thing, because our brains actually learn from pain.
Yep.
It's true. And we don't want that to be true. We want to protect our kids from pain. But pain is actually part of what allows our brain to store, like, oh, I'm not going to actually do that again.
Right.
That wasn't fun. Let's not do that. And when we don't get that pain response because we've been protected from it, our brains won't know that that's not the best way to go about that.
Yeah.
So just be thinking about that as you're doing this. And when you see behaviors coming up and patterns, then maybe you need to go back to the last step we just talked about. Has this been modeled? Am I modeling for them what it is to complete things? Do I tend to be a person who's not completing things myself?
Yeah.
And so my child is just modeling the fact that I say that I'm going to do it and I don't actually follow through. Or they see me facing hard things and I'm struggling to follow through with the hard thing. And really what they're doing is just duplicating what they see, because that's what our kids are going to do.
Yes.
They're not going to listen to our lectures when we're angry. They're going to do exactly what we do.
They're going to model what they see.
They're going to model what they see.
Yep. And that's just, that's
life.
That's it.
If they see you avoiding your consequences or lying to get out of your consequences or any of those type of things, they're going to do what you do. So every time you see a behavior come up, and we were big about this too, and we learned some really interesting things through foster care of how much DNA can play into behavior that's not even in front of them but lives within them. Think about what's my part I'm playing.
Yeah, that's good.
In this at this moment. And again, we're talking about maturity maybe because you're a parent and you need to know what you need to do to help raise up your child. And we're also talking about this in yourself.
In yourself, yes.
If you're struggling to do the things and follow through with the hard things, you likely didn't have somebody helping you then.
Yep. So another one here is helping identify what brings self-satisfaction. That's a huge one. We talked about that. I think we talked about it almost in every podcast so far, just how important satisfaction is. It's something that we actually need to be satisfied in what we do literally every day. There needs to be some form of satisfaction.
Yes.
And helping them understand that, like, satisfaction is actually important. It's not you don't have to settle for whatever. It's like, no, you really can be satisfied in the things that you're doing. Yeah, you don't.
America just has this tendency to care about what's next. Like, we are a nation of always looking toward what's next, what's better, what's down the road, what are we growing toward, all of that. And we have not learned to connect to what is great about this day and how am I satisfied by this day. and we're passing it on to our kids for sure. And it may have been passed on to you a long time ago, where you satisfaction is interesting here, because it's like, well, how do you even know if you're satisfied? What does it look like to be satisfied? And I think this as much comes into resting as it does anything. We like to call it and talk about it like digesting.
Yeah.
We tend to like live on this elevated onto the next thing, always like there's never this moment where we downshift and we take a deep breath and we allow our bodies to digest our day or digest our experience of, wow, that was really amazing
really
what I just did.
Yeah.
Or that conversation I had was really great. Or gosh, that night of sleep I had was, that felt really good.
Yeah.
Or that time with my spouse or that time with my kids, and allowing that to actually be embodied by us.
Yeah.
We tend to just be like, okay, on to the next.
On the next thing. Yeah. What does it actually feel like to be satisfied? And help them discover that, because it's going to be different for everyone, but help them to actually sit in that space.
And I'm going to call our daughter-in-law out here for a second, because she has a great example here of, so she's an artist, and we were talking with her about this idea of satisfaction, and she realized that she paints, and so she would paint something, and then she would always pick at it, like it's just not, it's like it's not there, there still needs to be one more thing, and then she would finally get to the point where she would just give up, like it's got to be done, like I just have to be done, it's got to be done, it's good enough, like. Or she would get a new idea. She would wait for a new idea to come to like release the old idea. And she never felt satisfied when she completed a painting because she didn't know that was an invitation that was available to her.
Yep.
To actually look at what she had spent all that time and energy creating, all her beautiful talent that is now on display, that she had something that was in her mind and she was able to relay it to something that could be shared with so many other people. And to just drink that in. Yeah. Take the time and give herself permission to feel proud of what she had created and to feel satisfied by the work that she had done and by the art that was now in the world from her. And so this was a big game changer for her, even in that. It
was great. Yeah, it was just for her to take a moment when she finished to take a step back. And even 5 minutes, guys, 5 minutes to just take in what you have created or what you've done.
Yeah.
Changes
and that could
game.
look like a variety of things for you as an adult, whether it's art or maybe a work project or anything. You can come up with your own examples. Yeah.
Yep. So a couple more here, guys, and then we'll see where we go from here. But we want to help sort out feelings, imaginations, and reality. It says up to about 5, they feel as if it's their reality. So what I mean by that is help them understand that like what they're feeling in this moment isn't necessarily the end of everything, because in their body, because up until about 5, when kids say like I feel like I'm dying, or they have these like the meltdowns that these kids have, like they didn't get the thing that they wanted, and in their body it literally feels as if they are dying.
Right. That's really real.
Yeah, because they did,
and we think they're over exaggerating and being drama queens.
Yeah, but but to them again, because remember, it's this egocentric age where everything is about them, and they didn't get what they wanted, and so it is this like, and so that's where this attunement comes in and helping them understand like, yeah, I know that feels really hard right now, or that's really disappointing, and helping them put language to what they're feeling, and being with them in that space, but let them also know that we're going to be okay. We're going to be okay. But I'm here with you in this traumatic event that you're really feeling right now.
Right.
And not making light of it, but helping them to sort out the feelings between what's real and then what is actually.
Yeah, because after the age of 5, all those big feelings are still going to come, right? And what they thought was real, as if it was real in real life, is going to start to shift too.
Yes.
And it is that this feeling feels really real, as it always did, but now your brain actually has the ability to understand that it isn't necessary. And begin to separate. And again, this is all in a like age 6, that's a beginning. By age 12, they should be able to know the difference between their feelings being reality and them being just feelings.
Yeah.
And again, you can see where this goes if we don't develop the skill. We're adults who have big feelings, And again, the problem is not the big feelings.
Right. Correct. 100%.
Life is going to be challenging, and it's going to bring us big feelings. We are going to have sadness and anger, and we're going to have anxiousness and fear. Like, that's all appropriate all the way through our whole entire lifetime. But when we don't know that it's not the end all be all of the truth, then we end up being capsized every time our feelings arise, even as adults. And you see this in kids being completely capsized by their big feelings because they don't have the skill to get on top of that emotion and ride it out.
Yeah.
And that's this age of, okay, big feeling, we're here for it. Or the monster under the bed is really just your imagination, but I don't dismiss it. I think that's an important part here as a parent. Good. Like, what we're not saying is help sorting out feelings, imaginations, and reality by dismissing it.
Yeah, nope. Yeah, that's good.
But leaning into it and helping them identify and figure out, kind of like baking the cake.
Yep. Very similar.
I do, you watch.
Yep.
I do, you help. And what might that look like in the feelings and imagination and differentiating reality realm where I'm helping, like, I'm caring for your emotion.
Yeah.
While you're watching me care for your emotion.
Yes, that's
now
good.
I'm going to care for the emotion, and I'm going to invite you into caring for your emotion
as well. Yep.
Now you're going to care for your emotion, and I'm going to champion you in that. Or I'm going to help you in that. And then then you're going to care for your emotion. I'm going to champion you. That could totally be used here as well.
Absolutely. So a few more here, guys. So feedback on guesses, attempts, and failures. I'm going to read them all, then we kind of can talk through them all. So help develop talents and resources, and then being taught the family history of God's family, and then the big picture of life. So these last three needs here are just, feedback on attempts and failures. So like basically, how did that go? That might not have been the smartest thing to do. Or that was a good try, good guess. It was this, I just continued to encourage and to walk with them in this process of figuring out, again, what's good for them, what's satisfying, even in answering a question or taking a test or trying out for the baseball team or whatever it might be, but giving them feedback on what they're doing and how they're doing it, I think is hugely important.
And developing curiosity around maybe what could you have done differently? Let's imagine together what might have went differently if you would have done it this way. Yep. Or, when they come back and they're like, oh, I totally failed here. Okay, so what was another option that maybe you didn't think of in real time? Let's try that on. Oh, maybe that would have turned out differently, and letting it be a curiosity space that trains their brain at the same time. Yeah.
I think, too, just helping them develop their resources and talents. I think that's a huge one, too. Encouraging your kids. Like for our kids, it was dance and martial arts. And so just always encouraging them to go for it in those spaces.
Yeah, we were really big believers in this, and we didn't have two pennies to rub together literally the entire time we were raising our kids. But we always found ways to hear what their heartbeat was and what they were passionate about, and found ways to invest in that. Yep. I'll never forget when we went out west and surprised our son with a coaching session at a parkour gym because he was outside in the backyard filming himself over and over and over again to learn how to do parkour back in the day when there was no social media, there was YouTube, and there was a couple of videos. Yep. And then he would create videos of his own body and study his body to figure out how to do that trick and how to do it better. And here he is, 20 years later.
20 years later now.
Doing stunt work for a living.
Not quite 20 years, 15.
15, yeah. Doing stunt work for a living, and who would have known then? But it was one of those things of, gosh, I can see your passion, and we are going to find a way to invest in this developing identity you have and the work you're putting into creating that.
Yeah. And then this last one here, just teaching them their family history, who they are, where they come from, how they fit into that family, how they fit into the family of God, how they the big picture of life. That yes, like we come from a line of whatever it might be, and this is what we carry, this is what we bring to the world, and you have a part in that. And giving them again that sense of identity, that sense of belonging, that sense of part of the whole, that they actually can make a difference and contribute to the world.
Right. Yeah. I think this is really lost in our society completely, honestly. Maybe it's because our families are not what we needed them to be. And so we don't want our kids to really know where they fit in their family history, that the family history kind of gets like thrown out the window and not validated because it's a train wreck.
Right.
Versus this is actually your lineage. These are the people before you. And I think your family does an incredible job of this.
Yeah.
Tennison's family every couple of years does a family reunion. And at that family reunion, they're always bringing up their ancestors and who they are and what they did and how they made a difference and their story. And then it makes you realize like, oh, like what if somebody 50 years from now was telling my story?
Yeah.
Like, what am I like? Oh my gosh, they paved a path for these people in this room to be sitting here, to be family together. They couldn't have pictured it back then. They had no idea what it would look like. But here I am sitting in their legacy.
Yes. Yep.
And what if the people in this room captured that legacy and multiplied it? And it's that same thing for your child in developing their identity. Who are they within this larger family unit?
Yeah.
In God's family, we talked about this in, I think, the infant or maybe the introduction of just the fact that in the family of God, we actually get a second chance at family.
Right. Yeah. Yep.
And so even if your family history or your spouse's family history is not something that you feel that you can really celebrate, one, I encourage you to go back far enough to find that.
Yes, that's good. It's there.
It's there. It's likely there, and there's likely something good somewhere. Second of all, there's the family of God, and there's amazing family history there, and we know it. It's in Scripture. Yet, do we really write ourselves into that story?
Right.
And do we help our kids really write themselves into that story in the way that they also carry the story?
Yeah. Yep.
And they
good.
too get to be a part of that, and it really helps formulate their identity and their belonging within the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, guys, we've gone over like we normally do, but that's okay. This is really good. And so what we're going to do, we're going to, in our next podcast, guys, we're going to start back with the tasks that are needed in this stage. So the things that the child needs to do themselves to be fully mature, and then move into something, the obvious holes in the maturity, and kind of take a look at that. And then we've got some other things after that too. But I think those are the big things we're going to cover in our next podcast. So
We'll see you soon.
See you soon. You've been listening to the Table and Well podcast. New episodes stream every Tuesday. If you have enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a review to let us know. Also, subscribe on your favorite listening platform to stay up to date on all things Table and Well. To learn more, start your journey, or get information on how Table and Well can help develop your community, family, or teams to be relationally healthy and authentically connected, please go to tableandwell.org/collab to schedule an interest call, or you can email us directly at known@tableandwell.org.